Cheech here with Fly Fish Food, and we have Skill Builder 33 for you. It's fall in Utah, so we're fishing streamers a lot. I'm going to show you the way I like to mostly articulate my flies. I'm going to show you when to articulate a fly, and then I have a method that's even more durable for articulating flies that I learned, and I'm going to show it to you.
That's a big
We're going to talk about articulating a streamer. Okay, so here we have a little bugger we tied. We're going to put that on the back half of another hook. And we have chosen the Gamakatsu B10S. This is a stinger hook. And why don't I put the stinger hook on the back? I'll tell you why. Because I want the wide gap in the front. A lot of the streamers that I tie articulated are going to have a little bit of bulk in the front, and so I like a wide gap. For a fly like this on the back, I like just a normal Aberdeen bend. This is the new Umpqua XT350 or a Daiichi 2461. All those work. Now, just what hooks you use, I mean, it's kind of personal preference. But I have some opinions on how to make the articulation connection. I think there are people who don't do enough, and I think there are people who do too much. And there will be people who say that I'm up in the night and this doesn't work. But I've only been doing this for about 2 weeks, so they're probably right. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we have our front hook in the vise, and if I were to put barbell eyes on something like this, I would start with that right now. But for demonstration purposes, we're just going to show you how to do the wire connection. All right, so what I like to do is get a nice thick base of thread down. Okay, so that's that's not very far back. The bend of the hook starts about right here, and that's usually where you're going to start tying materials on to a fly like this. But I find that if I wrap my thread all the way down to about right here, that's where I want my articulation to come off of that. And the main reason is it leaves a lot less of the hook gap to get intertangled with the back half. Articulated hooks foul, it's just part of the game, but this is a trick that you can do to reduce it. Okay, so once I have that here, I'm just going to bring my thread up here, and I'm going to get some streamer wire. This is the intruder wire from Hairline, or you can just get beadlawn. And it doesn't have to be super strong. I think that, with the beadlawn stuff, there's like 49 strand. The more expensive it is, the better, and more wiggly stuff you're going to get out of it. Hairline does a great job sourcing this. This is a piece of green, and they make a bunch of different colors. Color of the wire doesn't matter too much, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the wire on top of the hook, and I'm going to have it go slightly past the eye. Okay, and there's a reason for that. And then I'll just take this and start wrapping this back. And I want to keep that wire on kind of the far side of this hook, okay? And I'm going to wrap it all the way down here, okay? So my wire goes out here. At this point, I can put beads on. If I want to space this out, there's like a 3D bead. What are these called? The small 3D bead. So either one of these. Let's see, I'll just put one of these big silver ones on there and show you how I like to do it. But to put a bead on in between the two hooks, and I don't like glass beads because they break. These are plastic. They're pretty dang durable. So I'm just going to thread one of those on, and then I'm going to take my articulated, or my back section, and I'm just going to string it through here, and then I'll take it again and put that through here. Some guys will build a whole bunch of these at the side and prep them, and there's a perfect length of wire you can get. If that's how you like to tie, go for it. It works great. All right, so now I'm to a critical part of the fly where if I pull this too tight, it's going to restrict the movement. If I leave it too loose, it might foul too much. So I like to pull it so that we have, roughly equal space in front of the bead and behind the bead. A nice little compact loop, just a little bit bigger than the eye of the hook, and that's where I like to set up my wire. So once I have it here, I'm just going to grab this and I'm just going to do a few securing wraps and then grab my wire cutters. Curtis hid all of his scissors from me, so I got to use the right thing. So I'm just going to cut those to length, and now I'm just going to cinch down back here. And once I'm here, I can bend that wire a little bit, and you can see that sits really nice, almost parallel with the other one. And then I'm just going to wrap that up, and I'm going to try to keep that other piece of wire right next to the one I just wrapped. And if I just do touching turns, it'll automatically do that for me. If you do a lot of these, it becomes kind of second nature. So here is why I leave these long. Okay? Some people say you go through the eye of the hook, but the eye of the hook really isn't that big, and this is going to clog that up. So all I do from here is I'm going to back off, about to here, fold these over and catch those down and wrap forward on them, and then back. And we almost cut that just right. I'm just going to kind of, man, maybe I need to get Curtis's scissors back. These suck. All right. So there I trimmed it, and be careful because there's wire in there. If you have a lot of tension on your thread, you will break it. So tight, tight, tight all the way back to where we cut it, and then I'm going to back off my tension and give it a few loose wraps, and then I can be tight again. Anyway, once we're here, just take some super glue and let that soak in. That will not come undone. Once you have it here, where I'm going to start, I'll get some of that super glue off of there and wipe it on Curtis's desk. Anyway, what I'm going to do is now once this is here, I'm going to start tying my materials in about right up here. So yes, it does leave a little tag of thread, so use it to your advantage. Use it as a hot spot or use a color that will blend in, up to you. But anyway, this is the way that I like to make articulated streamers. My Lego homies are here helping me. We're going to talk about a very important subject, and what is that? Articulated flies. Now in Spanish, when you're asking a question, you put a upside down question mark. That's how important this is. It's important in multiple languages. But articulated flies, why? Okay, so we need to ask ourselves, why do you articulate a fly? So here we have a hook chassis. Let's just say, here's kind of the hook. We have a connection. There's a bead right here, and here's another hook right there. So let's say that that's our articulated fly chassis. And, we need two hooks on that fly. Why? Because mostly it's if a fish is going to eat this fly from the side, if a fish is going to come and T-bone this fly, and if the fish has any chance of getting both of those hooks in its mouth on a T-bone, which does happen, you're going to be fighting with two different hook points, and they might work against each other to go in the fish's mouth. So, as a general rule, I would say, an articulated fly. Brigham, do we have a ruler here? Oh, yes, we do. Thanks to the old Renzettis. All right, so here I have a little ruler here. But articulated fly design is very individual to the fisheries that you fish. Because if you have a bunch of small fish in your fishery, why are you fishing an articulated fly? Just so that the back half swims better? If that's the case, just cut the hook off the back half of your fly because you really don't need that and it could cause problems. If you're fishing for a bunch of really big fish that have a mouth, let's say, we're going to use this ruler here, but let's say that a fish has a mouth that is, 2.5 inches wide. That's a pretty decently sized fish. So let's say that you have an articulated fly that was like this. You see them all the time. There's one hook and then another hook right there. So that fish is going to try to eat that. You're going to try to put both of those hooks in its mouth. But if your fishery has, up to 16 to 20 something inch fish, they're going to fall in that range. Now I know I'm rambling here, but I've given this a lot of thought. So what you would do to make this fish more effectively is just cut off this hook point because the fish is going to be able to get the whole thing in its mouth anyway, so you don't need 2 hooks, or get rid of this altogether. You don't need this to wiggle. Just build a fly with a longer marabou tail or something, and the fish will not, short strike that because they're not that smart. If they see a bug this big, they're going to try to put the whole thing in their mouth if they're a fish big enough. All right? So, if you're going to build articulated flies for, like, let's say if we had, fish with a, 2.5-inch wide mouth. So if I were going to fish a fishery with, 16 to 20 something inch fish in it, I'd probably make my back hook about that long and have a bead, and then I'd have my front hook about that long. That way this fish, let's draw him from a top angle. He's a big fat guy. That fish, here's eyes, and he's going, this is the top of him. Okay, here's his spines. And he's about to eat this back fly. He's not big enough to get both of those hooks in its mouth at the same time. Most of the time. Sometimes fish are dumb. But he is likely only to get one hook or the other in its mouth at the same time. So, at the end of the day, design articulated flies that have your hooks spaced out enough so that they don't fight against each other when you're trying to set the hook on a fish. So if you're fishing little tiny articulated flies like this, cut off the back hook, build them out of marabou, but they're really not going to add a ton of value. So articulate your flies only when the situation calls for it. Otherwise, you might catch fewer fish. I mean, you'll still catch fish on the little guys, but I have found that if I just build, my intermediate sized flies on, maybe like a long shank streamer hook, like a TMCO 5262 or 5263, I'm fine. If I need a longer fly, that's when I'm going to start doing articulated flies. There you go. There's Cheech. Hopefully you learned something from this. I know it's kind of confusing and a pain in the butt, but it's something that is necessary if you want to poke more fish. All right, now that we've showed you the articulation method using thread, there's also another way to articulate your flies. It's a little more durable. This is commonly used on, pike flies, bigger, predator stuff, where if you get a fish on your back hook, it very well could pull it out. So we'll just show you how to do that. This is going to be our front hook here. We're just going to dress this with, quite a bit of thread. I changed the thread. Well, they don't need to sit here then. They don't know, Brigham. They don't need to know that I changed the thread color just for this. All right, so I'm going to lay down a fairly thick layer of thread on this hook. And let's say that I've got a fly tied on this fella. This is a size 1 Gamakatsu B10S, and this is a size 2. Now if I were to put this right here, I mean there's not a lot of distance between those, and I could do it with wire, but I'm going to show you a really rigid method on how to attach a back hook. This isn't anything new. People have been doing this for a while, but you can grab a shank, any shank. This is one of the next gen shanks, I think, from Flyman. And I'm going to use this side of it, and I'm just going to come in here and cut it. Cover your eyes. Goodness. So I just cut this little chunk off of there. Okay. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to measure how far I want it to stay out. That's a good length. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take my back hook and put it in this shank. Maybe. There we go. And we're going to tie this on. Now, if I were to tie this on just like this, again, not a lot of distance behind the hook. So what I want is I want to make sure this little shank is further back than the bend of the hook. So I want it to be about right here. You could even make it, this long. So if you do it this way, there's a few ways to do it. I'm going to show you the way that I've been doing it most recently. But as you can see, I need to tie this in about right here. But I also want to close off this shank back here. So I shouldn't have put that on there quite yet. I got ahead of myself. So we're going to take this out. And we're going to put this in our vise like this. So the shank goes in. Don't over tighten this, because this is a good way to ruin your jaws. If you pull this down and it slips because it's not very far in there, no good. So we just take our thread, and those will suck together once we get some tension on it. And you could tie flies on this. Like you could use part of this shank and to put some materials on or whatever. You could just leave it plain. You could put some beads on there. You could weight it. You could do all kinds of stuff. So once we get here, we're going to kind of keep those lined up so that when we tie them on the hook, they're going to be oriented the way we want. And once it's here, I'll put a tiny bit of super glue. And now we'll grab that other hook. Right? And now we'll take this little shank, and that's sharp. That just cut my thread. Oh man. What a junk show. I was going to show you a cool way just to transition from that shank to this shank, but you can imagine I did it, but I'm not going to, okay? I'm pissed off at this thread now because it broke while I was trying to show a cool skill. All right, so here we go. We've got them both kind of wrapped with thread a little bit. At this point, you're going to take this one and lay it along the side of this one, because if we were to put it on top, it would turn the eye of the shank the wrong way, and then we'd have a hook that would ride on its side. Anyway, the only thing that you have to watch out for when you do this is you got to make sure that your back hook has an eye big enough to not just clear this, but have enough room to allow it to move. Otherwise, it will foul up. And don't do that until it's all the way tight in. Jeez, I just moved it all around. All right, so once we have that, we're just going to hammer down this with thread, super glue it down, and you know, there are all kinds of ways to get this to even stay better. You can take these shanks in the hook and take a piece of sandpaper and rough them up. That will make it so this will never slide off. But man, this is so solid just how it is. You're probably not going to have any issues whatsoever with this, but if you like to go to the nines and go overkill, you can sand down the shanks. But anyway, that is a cool way to do a super durable articulated fly.